APUSH Chapter 18 notes covering the early 1850s. The major questions we're going to look at are: explain how the issue of slavery in the territories acquired from Mexico disrupted American politics from 48 to 50. And we just got all this Mexican concession land from Mexico. Now, slave are free. Number 2, point out the major terms of the Compromise of 1850, what the North get and what the South got, and how this argument attempted to diffuse the sectional crisis. Did it diffuse it or just put it off? Number 3, explain why the fugitive slave law stirred moral outrage and fueled anti-slavery agitation in the North. This was a huge tinderbox just waiting to explode. Indicate how the Whigs Party's disintegration over slavery signaled the end of non-sectional political parties. So with the end of the Whigs, we get the end of national parties and only have sectional parties. And when you just have sectional parties, you will have civil war shortly following. Number 5, describe how the Pierce administration, I know you never even knew we had a President Pierce, as well as private American adventurers, who we call filibusters, pursued numerous overseas and expansionistic ventures, primarily designed to expand slavery. Not a huge amount of foreign policy material during this time period, so this is basically what we're going to be covering here. And of course, it has to do with the expansion of slavery. Number 6, describe Americans' first ventures into China and Japan. Diplomatic, economic, cultural, and religious consequences. And last but not least, I think, describe the nature and purpose of Douglas's Kansas-Nebraska Act and why it fiercely, notice the word, fiercely rekindled, not greatly, fiercely rekindled the slavery controversy that the Compromise of 1850 had been designed to settle. All right, so let's begin. The Compromise of 1850, know it, love it, learn it. One law, and look at what I got here, A through M. Are you kidding me? So let's go through A through M. Let's take a look at the timeline. We get the Wilmot Proviso, or Proviso, as some say. You get changing views on the right of Congress to regulate slavery. We have precedents set by the Articles of Confederation. Under the Articles, we had the Northwest Ordinance of 1787 and the Missouri Compromise of 1820. Now, all of a sudden, changing views. Compromise offered. The election of 48. Gold. So we were talking about power. Now we're definitely talking about money. Old Rough and Ready. The old guard. We got Clay, Calhoun, Webster. They're still around, but barely. The death of Old Rough and Ready. Effects of Compromise of 1850. Did the people want it? The effects on our parties. The Democrat Party, Whig Party. The death of 3 great statesmen. Clay, Calhoun, and Webster. And the blunder. Notice what a good word we use here. The blunder of the fugitive slave law. That just tells me so much about what it's going to be about. So let's get started. First, Wilmot. David Wilmot from Pennsylvania gets up and says, I hereby... Let's take a look.
In the 1840s, as America expanded west, the South wanted slavery to expand with it.
Whether or not the government could actually stop or keep slavery from expanding into Western territories, that question actually becomes one of the heated questions of the 1840s and begins to really divide the nation by the 1850s.
Democrats tended to take the view of what was known as popular sovereignty, which is that the territories ought to be open to slavery, and at the very least, people in the territories ought to decide for themselves, and that the decision shouldn't be made until they apply for statehood.
But in 1846, Representative David Wilmot, a Democrat from Pennsylvania, proposed legislation which came to be known as the Wilmot Proviso, that would ban slavery outright in any new territory won from Mexico in the Mexican-American War. The legislation triggered a split in the mostly pro-slavery Democratic Party, and Wilmot was unable to get his proviso passed.
It went through the House, but it did not go through the Senate.
The failed amendment greatly amplified the North-South split over slavery and pushed the country further towards civil war.
So let's look at the changing views on the right of Congress to regulate slavery. Whoops, I'm sorry. I got ahead of myself here. Let's go back here. The Wilmot Proviso. Number 1. Wilmot gets up. It says, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude shall ever exist in the territory acquired from Mexico. Now, these were words directly taken from the Northwest Ordinance. The logic here was, since Mexico had already abolished slavery, it should not be extended in the U.S. acquisition. The rider fails to pass. So, changing views on slavery. Previously, no one doubted the right of Congress to regulate slavery in the territories. Bonus point. Give me 2 examples of the legislation that prove this out. New Southern view. Let's take a look how these views change. Congress had no constitutional power to prohibit slavery in the territories, but a constitutional duty to protect it there. So you can see a full reversal here. The logic, territories belong to the states united, not the United States. The federal government served as the agent of the states. This is the compact theory of the states. What is it? The compact theory of the states. Oh, what's the compact theory of the states? Know it, love it, learn it. The compact theory of the states was the federal government served as the agent of the states. See? Constitutional guarantee of property rights meant that Congress could not prohibit slave owners from taking their property into the territories. And D, thus, Southerners came to view the Missouri Compromise as unconstitutional. Question: if you buy drugs legally in Nevada, are you legally able to own them in another state? It's kind of the same thing, isn't it? The Northern view. Since slavery is a moral evil, Congress has a moral obligation to follow the highest law from Seward and prohibit slavery wherever its jurisdiction extends. Since it has the constitutional power to make, quote, make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territories, unquote, it may prohibit slavery. So we'll start part 2 with the compromise views offered.